after you're baptized, the decision's already been made. And that's the thing. That's what it is. It's the choice. I'm making a choice. Hopefully people will see that and they'll think about that choice. I had to think about it. You know, am I ready for this? Nope. But you know what? God thinks I am.
Even today, our God, he comes to us and he meets us right where we are. More specifically, even today, our God, he comes to you and he meets you right where you are. He's not looking for us to be perfect. That's actually the reason he came. He just wants us to be with him. You can't grasp how much he loves you, how much he loves me. And really the only question that's left, it's not a question for God, instead it's a question for us. The only question that's left is, are we wanting more of him? Do you want more of God? Are you wanting more of him in your life? Do we want more?
So that's a clip actually from our summer party. That was one of the things we've actually since killed, which is kind of crazy. So, and how that came about, how the summer party came about was, for the first 4 or 5 years of the church, one of our big Sundays was called the outdoor service. So we'd have the outdoor service at the classic old school park in Sioux Falls, old part of town that's just awesome. My wife and I, in the video earlier, you saw my old house that we used to live at. That's a block and a half away from McKenna Park. I used to walk through McKenna Park every single day. So it was this warm, fuzzy thing for me. I didn't know it was a sacred cow for me. And in the past, outdoor service, we'd see an uptick. So we'd see a lot of new faces come in. It was always our baptism Sunday, but we'd see an uptick. About 4 or 5 years into it, it became the low tick. And so low tick, but it was such a sacred thing to me that I just kind of ignored it, even though all the time and energy and resources just kind of kept ignoring it. Well, we hired a guy who just transitioned recently, one of my closest friends, went back into real estate, but he got on staff and he's like, this outdoor service thing, I feel like we should get rid of it. And didn't even realize whose toes he was stepping on. I was like, oh, you don't love my family? You don't like me connecting with God in the park with Jesus? It sounds crazy, but those are the things you think, you don't care about Sioux Falls? You just hate all of Sioux Falls? And he's like, no, I just think we should give it a new life or do something different with it. And he's like, what if we just threw a party every summer? In the middle of summer, because right now it's just a dead time, what if we did a party and did baptisms at it and tried to make it the most outrageous party ever? And also, what if we just tied in the story of the prodigal son and the dad throwing the son a party? And it led perfectly into our story. And so for 3-4 years in the middle of summer, we'd had this huge uptick, which would can create this new wave to fall. So instead of July being dead, I don't know how it is for here, cold is what we get in South Dakota. We get cold like no one's business. North Dakota is a degree higher, But I mean, it's already, we were like in the 40s last week, like in the morning. It's cold. And so summer is like sacred. You try to like eat up as much of summer as you can, so you skip church. But so we did this summer party, and it was just awesome. Even like why Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son is because he's eating with tax collectors and sinners, and they're grumbling and mumbling. And then this extravagant display of grace. And so even with balloons, we had so many balloons. It was literally like this deep coming in. And we helped folks who struggled as far as age and that kind of thing, or they had just kind of some physical things. So we helped with that. But I just kept saying, like, I don't think it's scandalous enough. Like, I just kept feeling like this is a story that's appalling. It's a story that's really a scandal. It should make religious people upset that they're doing this in a church. And so I was just like, not intentionally trying to do that, but I'm like, I just don't feel like we're getting God's grace here, guys. Because we haven't had anybody throw a flag at us. Not one person has said, this is too far. You're spending too much money. Translation, you're spending too much on your kid. Like, you should beat him over the head. Like, and now you're getting out the best robe, the ring, the sandals on his feet. And so that was just kind of the heart of it. But it was just an awesome thing, especially that tied in so perfectly. So we got rid of summer party. This is the first year. And I was actually the one who got rid of it. So I was like, I think we should get rid of the summer party. And Holly actually started laughing. She's like, I never thought I would ever hear this from you. And now we're doing baptism Sundays. So we do infant baptism Sundays. We just did that this last week. And then we also do adult baptism Sundays, which is not this Sunday, but the following. So that's kind of what we've done in place. I'm going to start off. There's so much we could talk about. I hope this has been beneficial, honestly, because I'm all over the place. I shared this with a few people between. I had a person pray for me. It's actually one of the worship. It was actually a worship leader. I just remember who it is. Actually, it's a worship leader at one of the network churches that happened to see me in the airport and just asked if he could pray for me. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to Pennsylvania. I actually at that point had no idea where in Pennsylvania. I found out I was flying into Harrisburg in Chicago when I was like, oh, I'm going to Harrisburg. I wondered. My wife had asked, Becky had asked earlier today, she's like Philadelphia? I was like, possibly. Like Pittsburgh? I was like, hopefully not Pittsburgh. I don't want to go to the opposite of heaven where the Steelers are at. I was like, there probably are a lot of non-believers in Pittsburgh, though, so it'd be a good place to start a church. Anyway, I'm sorry. So I've been a Bengals fan since I was 3. In the Steelers, so we were ahead 2-0, and I'm like, Ben Roethlisberger is somehow going to be resurrected from the dead, and he's going to come and just start throwing touch. Anyways, okay. So I lost my train of thought. Oh, he asked me. So I was going to Pennsylvania. I had no idea where, and he asked what I could pray for, and I said, pray that the pastors would be encouraged, that all of you would be encouraged, and that you would have 2 or 3 nuggets that you could apply to your church. And so that's really my hope. And even talking between as well, just someone mentioned my passion, and life has a way of just beating the passion out of you, doesn't it? Just with its jadedness and its crappy emails that you get, and people who send something by email and then they're like perfect in front of you, and you just want to be like, are you like, do you have multi-personalities like this? And so, but just life has a way of just beating it out of you. Cancer when you don't expect it, loss, hardship, people leaving your church that you've poured into for years. Kerry in the Newhoff in the start of his book, he talks about this family that he poured into for years. And then they left and said, we felt so uncared for. Mm-hmm. And Carrie's like, how can you feel that way? Mm-hmm. And I just related so much to that story. And so I think it's like in that emotionally healthy spirituality, it talks about keeping, it actually, off the story of the prodigal son, it mentions keeping our ear close to the chest of God. Mm-hmm. And just like hearing his heartbeat for others, for the church, but even more than anything, hearing his heartbeat and his love for us, I think is something that's so important. And as far as our passion, like I shared this, I just know without question. You don't have to tell me. I know what it feels like to feel lost. And there's nothing worse than being a kid lost in a store But even more so, just as an adult, there's nothing worse than being lost spiritually. And so for me, that's where my passion comes from, is I just know what it feels like to feel lost. And there's nothing worse. Actually, in the book I wrote on prayer, I shared about my daughter getting lost in a hotel. She was 4, and we were doing something on the first floor, and we had came up, and it was all the nieces and nephews there, so it was a bunch of hoodlums. I mean, we had more. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's kids everywhere. But Grayson accidentally went the next floor up, and we didn't see her, so she went up there, and we were in our hotel room for 15 minutes. And then my mother-in-law said, "Where's Grayson?" And it was just this moment panic of like, we've been in here at least 15, 20 minutes and she's not here. There was just this, I've never seen my father-in-law run in my entire life. And he was sprinting down the hallways. And what a great picture of the church. Just like realizing that for yourself of, I know what it feels like to feel lost. And man, this world is just hurting and lost and needs Jesus. They don't need us, they need Jesus. And so just that passion, I pray for all of us that we just keep our ear close to the chest of God and not forget that he loves us as well. And then he sees us hurting and he sees our pain and he sees the muck and the crap that we walk through and no one cheers us on. No one says, I'm sorry, which is so weird. It's like people throw hand grenades and it's like, hey, you might want to at least throw like an I'm sorry after that. And a lot of times it doesn't happen. And so I just want to just encourage you in that way, just to be encouraged. God sees you and he sees us and he sees all of us. I'm going to springboard in kind of one of the main parts that I was asked to cover was just message prep. And so I'm just going to walk through that if that's okay. Because I think really you want to grow a church, keep your passion for God like red hot. And it doesn't matter what kind of strategy you use. Keep your passion for Jesus. Realize just how much you need him. Like Psalm 40 is like a psalm that just every time I just get emotional even thinking about it. He lifted me out of the muck, out of the mud, and he set my feet on a new path, and he put a new song within me. It's like I'm so grateful for a new song, even for all of us. And so just like keep your passion hot, and just stay close to Jesus. But a lot of it really is, strategy, blah, 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 blah. But one of the honors that we have is preaching. And God can use that. In social media days, he can use it so many different ways. One of the things, so my assistant, Kaylin, she chops up my message in these little videos, and then she shares them. And even just the amount of traction they get, and it's kind of a cool discipleship piece as well. Because they'll hear it on a Sunday, I'll hear it, you'll hear it on a Sunday, and then you and I, not just our people, we'll forget it. And so even seeing yourself preach sometimes it's like, oh, that's right, citizenship in heaven. Why am I stressed about this? But also for our people, it's great. So utilizing that's been one of the things stewardship-wise. Chris Brown talks a lot about just like scalability and being able to utilize the same stuff over and over and over again. And that's what I've tried to do with messages. So just like, how can I use this? How can I keep using this? Even going through your message, taking quotes, and then just dropping them out, whatever. So, but really for me, I think it's ironic that I'm talking about preaching because I'm the weakest preacher in the room. Preaching is my Achilles heel. So I once heard a podcast, this interview, I think Carrie might have been doing it. He interviewed Mark Driscoll first, and then Craig Rochelle. And Mark Driscoll, at the time he was still at Mars Hill, he preps the same amount of time that his message is in length. So if he preaches for 50 minutes, he preps for 50 minutes. So I'm here, and they kept asking him, really? Really? And Mark's like, yeah, I just share. And I got done and I just wanted to bawl. I'm like, I'm prepping 15 hours, 50 minutes. And so then it was so encouraging. So I was like, it was a series on preaching. The next night was Craig Rochelle, and I'm like, if he says that he preps for 50 minutes, I am retiring right now. And I'm never doing this again. I'll never forget it. Craig Rochelle gets on, and he's like, I just want to let you know. He's like, I'm really good friends with Mark Driscoll. That is a very unique gift. That is not the norm. Like, that is not the norm. He's like, I agonize over message prep. He's like, it's a burden. My staff kind of knows not to even talk to me because I'm kind of grumpy when I'm working on my message. And I was just like, thank you, God. Literally, Becky was beside me, and I'm like, did you hear what he said? So be encouraged. So message prep's always been really, really hard. This is probably one of the greatest things that accidentally happened. So I have a group now I call them the firing squad. So it's a group of people on our team. Right now it is all staff people on my team who listen to the message. Not just my message, every message that's preached away from a true guest speaker at Embrace goes through the firing squad 2 times before they preach a message on Sunday. In the last 4 years, I've preached 1 time without it. It was I think it was like a month and a half ago. And I felt naked on stage and not in a good way. I don't know if there's a positive way of as I'm saying that, I'm like, back in. So, but I didn't like it. And so I'll kind of share why. So how it came about though, first off, prep is just grueling for me. This is like 7 years ago. It's just grueling, painful for me. So I'm beating my head against the wall. And finally, I go to Travis, our then executive pastor. He's the guy I keep mentioning. And I'm like, Travis, and he had just come on a few months. I'm like, I'm trying to make this transition, and I don't know how to, I'm trying to say it, but I don't know how to say it. You know, just you just get the end of your rope. And so he said, Adam, what I think you're trying to say is this. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, record this. I'm like, somehow, get this on a piece of paper. I'm like, because he's saying it, I'm like, that's it. Don't forget it. And so the next week, I'm in the same rut. I'm struggling. So he's like, quick side note. At this point, my wife had never seen my notes ever. It's a place of high insecurity for me. It's like the most sacred place in my soul. My wife's seen everything. She had never seen my notes ever. She had never heard me ever practice a message ever. That's how sensitive it was. So the next week I'm stuck again, and Travis is like, can I just see your notes? And I'm like, wow. I'm like all defensive. Why are you asking? Well, because you asked for my help, you jerk. And so I gave him my notes very reluctantly. In 5 minutes, again, we figured out the transition. So he just said, he's like, do you just want to meet with me once a week? And halfway through, we can just start talking this through. And I was like, I was so desperate, and I was so relieved that he had helped me twice. Those transitions would have taken me, I'm embarrassed, would have taken me an hour at least to figure it out. And he figured it out in less than 2 minutes. And so I was just like, okay, I'm willing to kind of let someone into my soul in this area. So we started meeting with each other, on a Wednesday. And at the time, I was finishing my message on Friday at noon. And so we'd meet on a Wednesday. He'd help me out. Man, I just think the transitions. Man, if you ended with this story, remember that person who came through the front door and shared that? You should share that. That story works perfect. Oh, I love that. What comes to mind to me is this and this and this. Oh my goodness, those are amazing. And so we started doing that. Then a few months later, our worship director at the time, Aubrey, still one of my closest friends. She's a worship leader now in Greeley, Colorado. Aubrey, she's super fun. She also has a heart for the lost. She also she's a gal, I'm not. She also is younger than me by 9-10 years. So there's a lot of different elements she brought. She started joining us as well. And so then I was like, gosh, would you mind if we met twice? What if we meet on Wednesday and what if we meet on Thursday afternoon? And I could preach the whole thing to you. So I did. And one of the things, at that time I was getting more comfortable, so I said, and if the only thing that will upset me is if you don't tell me the honest truth. If I feel like you're fibbing me or you're saying it's a good message, and you don't say the but, I'll be frustrated. So you have to say it. So that's when I started calling it the firing squad. I was like, you have to be brutally honest because I don't want to waste our time. I really want you to speak into this. No, like especially the first one, we can still do, I call it open heart surgery. We can still do open heart surgery. So if you decide that you just do not like where it's going, we can hack, even though I don't want to hack anything, I'm willing to do it. So we started doing that. We got it up to 7, 8 people, found out that was too many. We got it back down. Different people are invited, and then, hey, we're going to have you step out for a season. So it's constantly changing. At any size church, first off, there's maybe one staff person that might love it and is really, really good. Find out who is in line with you. One of our campus pastors, what we figured out is when he comes in the meeting, it can, I don't know how to say this without sounding bad. It can frustrate my way of thinking. And I'm like, man, this isn't helpful, but your ideas are really good. I feel like your ideas would be better before I even started working on it, because he's got 7,000 ideas, and Travis is the main guy leading the room. I actually not even leading the meeting. Waltner is leading the meeting, Travis is, because he just stays the course. He's like, one idea. And this campus pastor will be like, I think we should go over here and here and here and here. And he's like, none of those ideas. So he's like, we are staying the course. People are going to forget everything we say except 1 or 2 things. Just drive it home. So I'm going to see what else I'm doing. And then halfway, this was a Craig Rochelle thing. I hated that I was finishing my messages on Friday. Again, I feel, this is going to sound terrible too. I feel like a lady who is about to give birth who hasn't given birth. And it's like that holy burden. That was a terrible analogy. Ladies in the room, you can slash my tires. My car's not here though. So, but it just feels like I'm like, I don't want to be working on this message and ruin my whole week. And so Craig Rochelle talks about artificial deadlines. Really, the only deadline that I have to meet is I have to preach my message on 8:30 on a Sunday. I don't want to finish it on 8:30 on a Sunday. So what I started doing was I started creating deadlines, because I had now a team of people expecting me to preach half the message to them, which creates urgency in me to get my message out. So I moved it from Friday at noon is when I finished it. Then I moved it to Thursday, and my first meeting was Wednesday. And then over the years, it slowly crept up. So now I preach half of my message at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, and I preach all of it at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. So then it is done. There's been only 1 or 2 times when we've done open heart surgery on the second one, and then I just have to start praying for my soul, because I'm like, why are we doing this right now? But I trust Travis so much. If he thinks we need to, we need to. So another thing we've added in, this is where I'm getting spoiled now. In seminary, my preaching professor, if I ever preached someone else's message, I think I would not be able to, like my conscience would kill myself. It would just kill me. It'd eat me alive. But I feel I do not have this feeling with this. So right now, what is happening now, and this is something Travis asked for. This is one of those things as a pastor. There's things we do that we hate that other people like fantasize about. It's weird, isn't it? We're all wired differently. And so Travis is like, I feel like you're still lifting so much from when you start on Monday afternoon to Tuesday. I feel like you're still lifting so much weight spiritually, Adam. Can I come alongside you and help you lift that weight? And I was like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, how about I do a ton of research, again, all volunteer on his part. How about I do a ton of research for you, kind of lay out the history, lay out the text, and even give you like 3 talking points that would be really good, along with ideas on those talking points, and that could give you a good basis to work from there. Basically 3 pages of outline. So now I'm getting that every single week. So I get that on Monday at noon from him, and it's like analogies, like angel wings are in there too, like hair from God, like all kinds of stuff. Like, what else is in this? But so what I do is, so I just got the one, I don't preach on Sunday, I just got the one for next week. So he just sent it to me. I walked through it and I started crying. I'm like, this is so good. And so what I still do though, I still do the research. I love the research. It's something, that's the part I enjoy. I love finding out, like, what does citizen mean? Citizenship in Philippians, it meant being a citizen of a colony. And Paul is right in the city of Philippi, which is a Roman colony. And that's why he's talking about, even though we're in this foreign land, in this colony, we're still citizens of Rome. Just like we're on earth, we're in this foreign territory, this foreign place. But our citizenship, like that for me, just sets me on fire. I'm like, that's unbelievable. And a quick side note, I love that when Paul writes to Philippians, he's talking right to them. Again, back to LCBC, I don't know, I've never listened to a message. I'm guessing they're talking right to the person. Not the church person, not the religious person. He's writing right to a former Roman soldier who now lives in Philippi that understands what citizenship means. That just fires me up. We need to start talking like Jesus and start talking like Paul instead of some weird Methodist language. Okay, so anyways, I still like that. So I'll get those thoughts, and then like 2 weeks ago, I got Travis's stuff, and I'm like, I don't really like any of this. And here's what's so cool. This is again where I'm spoiled. He has no ego in it. So he did hours of work, and I told him, I said, away from your intro, I'm not going to use any of it. Didn't skip a beat. Great, perfect. And then I share what I'm going. He's like, oh man, that's 10 times better. So even in the entryway now, I'm getting that, like, he's helping me lift the weight. And for some of us, you want to lift the weight. You're more of I'm an extrovert. Being in an office by myself kills my soul. But I know for Becky, my wife, an introvert, that's the part she loves. And it would be the Sunday stuff that would be hard for her. I could be on a stage all day and like, I'd be embarrassed because there's other people more qualified, but I'd enjoy it. So it's figuring out who you are and how you're wired and how people can come alongside of you. Whether you have a staff of, at the time Travis started helping me, he was the only full-time person we had. So don't say like, oh, you're an Embrace, you got all these, no, you can do it too. And start looking for people, even when you're hired, who have that gift, that they love like small group discussion, they love developing questions. That's the kind of person you want to find. Also in the firing squad, away from Travis, he's got an MDiv himself. Nobody else in the room has an MDiv, and I love that. I'm not trying to reach pastors, I'm trying to reach humans. Pastors do have a human heart too, some days. Anyways, but so make sure it's connecting with your people. So that person you want to reach, have them represented in the room. That's why I loved having Aubrey in the room. She was the cool gal who didn't grow up kind of really in the church. I wanted to reach Aubrey's. And so I wanted her in the room. Here's what's so cool about the firing squad. So when you stand on stage, you can have total confidence because you've had a full team of people, brothers and sisters, who have said, this will preach. So on Sundays, I don't know if you get to Sunday, you're on Friday and you're like, this is the greatest message ever, and then Sunday comes and you feel like you don't even know if you know Jesus anymore. You can still get up on Sunday and preach with confidence because again, it's not about you, it's about the Holy Spirit and God working in and through you. It's not how you feel about it. You've had a full team that have said, Adam, this is going to preach, and so you just get up there and you lay into it, and they even sometimes will tell me, like, this right here, dude, just sit in this. Just sit in this right here. Just so when you get up there, I'll have on my notes, sit in this, where it's just like they're like basically just go to town on that. So I have confidence. I also have no worries that I'm going to say something I shouldn't. In a soundbite world, it terrifies me that a comment's going to be taken out of context. I see Andy Stanley getting bulldozed by it. I'm like, did you listen to the whole sermon? Oh, I haven't listened to the whole, oh my goodness, I might slash your tires, you know? But it's like, it's true, it's a soundbite, or you accidentally say something that you don't mean to say. Man, and so those are those moments, especially, so anytime I'm talking about, especially if anything relationally or, I mentioned the Me Too movement one time. I ran that past 7 or 8 ladies. And I said, is there any ounce of hesitation in you? And they said, Adam, lean into it even stronger. She's like, all of us, every woman here will just amen you. And I said, really? And they said, yes. And I said, there's nothing, like you can't twist that. And they're like, no, you can't twist that. I wish every husband would hear that. Every guy would hear that. And so it takes that safeguard away of even a joke. Like, is that going to hit or is that going to be misinterpreted? Even in between the session, so I checked in my email, one of our network churches that's new, and I understand a little bit. I'm like, so this last week I talked about pornography. So next week I'll mention to our team, hey guys, one of our network churches, they struggle with pornography. This is where the edginess in me is a little bit feisty. A 9-year-old was sitting in the sanctuary and they ended up having a conversation about pornography. And so next time, can we just stay away from it? And I'm like, thank God you had a conversation with your 9-year-old about pornography. Like, that's where I'm like, moms and dads. Like, I just want to sit down with mom and dad and say, moms and dads, like, I'm just telling you, your son has a penis, okay? And which means that he's going to think about this and this and this and this and this, and already has. And pornography is everywhere. Like, if they're on a computer, it terrifies me. They've most likely seen porn, and they've struggled with it, or they're thinking about it, and they have questions about it. And now, finally, the pastors mention it, so maybe I can talk about it too. And so I got that message, and I was like, thank God you had a conversation about porn with your 9-year-old. But again, that's where the method, our churches, you'll get all kinds of flags from people. You can't talk about porn because you're struggling with it in your private life. Like, the other day I was talking with someone. He's like, man, I love when you mention porn and stuff, and like, it was like harder stuff. And I know that like we were talking about our past, and I know that applies to the first-time guest. And I said, can I be honest? And that part of the message, I wasn't talking to the first-time guest. I was talking to people like you and me. Because you and me, the first-time guest can talk about porn because it's actually cool and popular, and you can tell your guy friends, and you're looking up. I was like, for us, that's really a hard conversation because we know better. And all of a sudden, just Holy Spirit conviction, he's like, you're right. And so it's like, that's the real rawness. And you got to use, again, be wise. But in that meeting, that's what's so good. They can say, hey, Adam, that joke's too far. Or, hey, Adam, like, gosh, I think what you're meaning to say is this. And when you said that, it kind of came out like that. So there's just a confidence. It makes it strong as possible. Last thing we just added, and this is because the Eagle Brook guy asked for it. He sits in the sanctuary during the 8:30 service. Between services, he comes out and with my notes and says, that didn't hit, you talk too fast here, I think you should cut this, and you should change that. So he shared 4 things this week. So I'm back in my room and I'm like, okay, what are we changing? I'm gonna leave that, I'm gonna change that. And so that's been even cooler. Okay, any questions on that part? I'm sorry if this is not beneficial. They do. So Holly so she has deadlines. She's like, these deadlines are not to be mean. She's like, if you don't have your first draft done by X, which is usually like 2 or 3 weeks out, you automatically aren't preaching that. And then there's another round 2. So if you don't have it by then, like if you make that first round but not the second round, we're going to pass. And she does, and that she is not a drill sergeant at all. The campus pastors worship the ground she walks on. And so there's a standard. Like, it's going to be solid. Like, we're entrusted with bringing the word of God for people. This is an important thing. And so they have the same process. And again, I think with exception of one who struggled with it, was more kind of an unorganized type personality. I know it was a hard thing for him. All the other campus pastors and me, like I said, the week I didn't, a month and a half ago, I felt so unsure. And you're like, is something going to hit? Am I going to say something wrong? Like, you just don't have that confidence, especially by the 3rd time you're preaching, you're tired. And so then you start second guessing yourself, like, is this even worthwhile? Like, I mean, it's so weird the things we think, isn't it? God's in control. We bring our best and He does it. He changes lives, we don't. And so the pressure is not on us. The pressure on us is bring your best. Bring your best to God. And but everything else is the Lord. But I think our team would say, oh, I would never go on stage without having that. And that's how I totally feel about it too. And always, another thing in those meetings is never draw blood. Like, so if you're in there and you got an agenda or a bone to pick with somebody and you're saying stuff out of a bad heart, I mean, there would be zero tolerance. Someone on the team would shut it down. Like, dude, are you okay? Because that just seemed like it was coming from a weird place. Like, and so I've never had that in that meeting. Instead, it's people who just want the best, want the preacher to feel strong, want the word to be clear and easy, like just easy to understand, not easy as a message, but easy to understand, and so everybody knows the intent behind it. But it was hard to get to that place, especially at first, because I was so sensitive and insecure. It was like my greatest insecurity as a pastor. I'm still insecure about it. So.
You talked about making sermon changes in between services.
Yeah.
On feedback. How much time do you have in between services?
So right now, again, this is one of those things. It's almost like I don't know what to think about it. So we have, in the past, our service times were 9, 10, 11 a.m. So back to back to back. So our services were very tightly run. Now it's 8:30, 10, and 11:30. I think the 11:30, and we have a 5 o'clock as well. I think the 11:30 is a little bit too late. I wish we get it back to 11:15. Just football, just the Steelers, just back to them again. I'm just kidding. So anyways, this is not going to crowd that I'm going to win over. I have a feeling.
You've actually got probably a divided group. Like I'm a Steelers fan, Matt's an Eagles fan.
Awesome. You know Jesus. No. So we have that gap. So we have 30 minutes in between. And like it's not huge changes. Like this week there was one change that I felt like was a pretty big ask. And yet I'm so glad he said it. Like I would never not want him not to say it. But he said, "Hey Adam, you ask a question about sin equaling death, but you haven't explained death yet." And I was like, ugh. And he's like, "I feel like if you told us what death is first and then asked that question, it'd be solid." But I knew, I'm like, man, we're messing with slides now, technology-wise, and I just didn't feel like I could do it. I'm like, ugh. I really wanted to talk about temptation and our desires, sin, death, and to ask this question and the sin. My question was, because James said, our desires entice and drag us away. And powerful imagery. The word entice is a hunting term, which means lead into a trap. And so I talked about duck hunting and sending out decoys, and ducks fly in thinking they're going to go hang out with their buddies. And I don't have a soul as I'm sharing this, but we're actually, it's a trap. My brother and I are going to kill the ducks that fly in here. And so I ask, what are you doing in your life that you know isn't right, but it just hasn't killed you yet? And so that was the question I asked. Like, what are you messing with? It might be fun. It might be lighthearted. You might even think you're in control, but it's actually dragging you. So you're actually not in control at this moment. But what is it that hasn't killed you yet? And I hadn't talked about death. And so that was a change. I said, gosh, I just don't think I can do that. So I ditched that one. But early on, I did something. He's like, you just never said it soon enough. So he's like, I feel like if you said that earlier, I was like, oh, I felt that. Actually, during the message, I felt that. So I went in and said, say this. So those kind of changes. And there was a joke he didn't think hit right. So he's just like, I just feel like it was kind of weird. I'm like, I kind of felt that too. And then he said, man, this right here is gold. Like, put exclamation points by it, so I did. So.
How long do you typically preach, and do you use visuals of any kind to accompany your message?
So, good question. So I'm preaching the longest I've ever preached before. In the past, I preached like 24 minutes, or even close, like a 20-minute message in the past would have been like heaven for me. Because again, the prep end is what's so hard. Now I'm preaching closer to 30, which feels weird, but I'm like really enjoying it. I'm getting much more. I'm still challenging myself, so I'm a manuscript preacher. I wish there was 2 professors at Asbury. One was Dr. Callis. He's kind of a legend, and he preached noteless preaching. And if there's one thing I wish I could redo, it'd be that, because I wish I could preach noteless. But we're taking baby steps to it. So, and then when I say we, the team is helping me. Hey, Adam, just cross all that out and just share the story. You know the story about duck hunting. You don't need to look at your notes to say what happened at duck hunting. Just tell me about duck hunting. So it just says duck hunting on there. And I get nervous still, even when I see it, I'm like, my notes aren't there. I'm going to tell you about duck hunting. But it's just like, no, you actually live that out. Just tell the story. You're not lying. Like, this is something you did. So it's so weird how that is. But so I'm continuing to push and kind of step out of that. So I preach manuscript. Even I used to have a music stand, and now I have a table that's more there. So I'm getting away from it, walking away from it. And like for talks, so we've talked for hours. My only notes that I have were this and this. So I can do it. It's so weird. Like, so this is, I'm letting you into my soul. I can do it if it's a talk. So if you ask me to come to a talk at your church, there's a high possibility I'll say yes. If you ask me to do a message, which for me means 10 pages of typed words, I almost always say no. But I just like, so I'm trying to make that difference. And I feel like I have a group of counselors in the room that are helping me. They're like, it's the same thing. Just get up there and say it like that. So that's kind of the baby step I'm taking. And so just learning. And that's for me is fun, that it never gets old. And hopefully for preaching, I don't care how long you've been preaching, challenge yourself. Switch it up. Push yourself out there a little bit. It's called faith. And so but it scares me. I mean, if you wanted to terrify me, just come sit by me before I go preach and take my notes and walk out of the room. I mean, I'd be terrified. I can't think of a few things that would scare me more. So
Any kind of visuals?
Visuals. So I'm using more and more visuals, which is something that is fun for me because I'm a nerd and I like to kind of try new things. So even like Jesus being the cornerstone of our lives. That week, and this is just kind of how I'm wired, I didn't want to talk to a seminary professor about what cornerstone means. I didn't want to talk to a pastor about what cornerstone means. Most pastors, their hands are so soft, it's like a baby's rear, which means they've never used a hammer or done anything in their life. The word cornerstone is not a church word, it's a construction word. So I called a mason, a second generation mason in our church, and I asked him about what a cornerstone is. Man, that word came alive. And like he told me about a cornerstone. It's the very first thing on a job site you set, and everything is built in a straight line. He's like, we use laser levels now. It's in a straight line up and out from that cornerstone. And so he told me all about it. And he kept saying it's the starting place. It's the starting place, it's the starting place. And everything else is built up and out from that. So a couple things I got from that is Jesus isn't enough if Jesus is just a part of the building. He's got to be the cornerstone. He's where it starts. Is another thing that just hit me. There were so many different things that just also I asked him, have you ever set the cornerstone wrong? And Brent right away said, yep. He said, we did a school one time, we set the cornerstone wrong, and we didn't realize it till about halfway through when our doors didn't fit. He's like our doors, all of a sudden it's like, why are the doors not fitting? And it was the cornerstone. And he's like, there was one wall so out of whack. He's like, to fix it, and he's like, we had to share all this, that we were doing this. We had to make one wall so thick because all of it was now fake. And so we had to, like, he's like, it ruined the whole thing. And so talking about Jesus, like, even slightly off from that, how much it messes with our life. So I just took blocks and had it up there. This week, one of the analogies Travis mentioned is for next Sunday is it talks about the Holy about God being living water and never thirst again, and it should overflow from our lives. And so what he thinks I should do is have a cup and just start pouring, because it shouldn't just affect us; it should overflow onto others. And so he's like, I just think it'd be powerful if you got up there with a cup and just kept pouring and pouring and let it visually overflow in front of people. Like, this is what our life should look like. And those stories and analogies is what people remember. Because ultimately, discipleship-wise, we're not looking for a cute sermon. We're looking for a life-changing sermon. We're not looking for a sermon that will impact somebody for a day. We're looking for a message that will start impacting them for life. So if we can put those stories in them, which Jesus was so good at, it's like a man who scattered seed, and some falls on the path. Well, that's not very spiritual, Jesus. Like, why don't you quote like the Old Testament a little bit more? No, it's like some falls in the thorns, and some falls in like, I mean, these agriculture people would have been like, I know exactly what that looks like. I've done some of that. I've done that. And so just given those stories that just people are like, man, I can understand that. And more than understand, I can remember that. And so just looking for those things that people remember.
I think to tie this in, do you turn your manuscript over to your media person for images on the screen? Do you have teaching notes? Do you?
So my message gets done Wednesday at 1 o'clock is when I start the meeting, so it's usually done at 2. Kaylin, my assistant, takes it from there. She knows kind of where the sticky phrases are at. So we decide which sticky phrases, which verses are going to go on the screen, how often, because sometimes it's too much. It's like, man, you're clicking 17 different clicks, and I'm like, so just what do you want me to remember? So we talk through that, and then they go to our graphics team. Again, we have not always had this. I used to build this myself. Okay, just to bring it back to earth. For years, I used to do this myself. And I used to use Prezi. Prezi was an awesome tool that could kind of zoom in and give you a visual picture. I spent way too much time on it because I was like, oh, and this, and we're going to have it do all this. Some people said, I kind of get motion sick when I'm watching your Prezi. I'm like, oh, that's probably not good. So we handed it to our graphics team. They build the graphics, and then they put it into a Pro Presenter or whatever it is. And then I look at it really quick on Thursday at 11 o'clock is when I do that. So I look at it. It takes usually 3 minutes. I think actually this. Oh, perfect. We'll get that changed. Perfect. That's good. So that's kind of the process. And then the people on Sundays the volunteers have my full message with it labeled where the clicks are at. And we're trying to get that process more refined. Because it's the time, this is again, like you can't replace God, so don't do that. But bring your best. Bring your best. So even some of the campus pastors are like, man, your key point came on like 10 seconds before you said it. And it's almost like you tell a joke and you start by telling the punchline before you tell the joke. It's like communication is huge. Jesus was a great communicator. Paul, I think, was a fantastic communicator. So there's just kind of that timing thing. They're like, if they could just wait, and I know it's a volunteer. And so that's where like trying to figure it out and training. And volunteers want to bring their best too, and they can tell when they've missed it. And that's on us to equip them. That's not on them. So, but yeah, that whole process is kind of crazy. The whole thing's weird. It's fun just to see it all. And then when someone mentions, man, I'll never forget that Sunday you did this. That Sunday you did this. Like just how it changed me is awesome. Any other questions on that part of things? So a couple other things with planning. So we are now roughly planned out through the end of 2019, roughly. What I mean by that is we have an idea of where a series is going. We don't have our series for next Christmas figured out. We don't even necessarily have this Christmas figured out. So just to kind of let you back in, we don't have much figured out. But this Christmas, we're thinking about doing, calling it Prepare Him Room from Joy to the World. Like just taking that one phrase and maybe talking about different like hymns and what they mean, possibly kind of sort of. Christmas is kind of a nostalgic time when people want kind of the nostalgic and they don't want new. So it's kind of an interesting dance of new, old. This last year we went really new, super modern, and I think we might have went a little too far and not had enough nostalgic. So just kind of figuring that out. Figuring out like during the summer is really when it's more of a kind of a discipleship piece. I think one of the series we're looking at for next summer is The Greatest Story Ever Told, and it going through the Bible. So just like kind of start to finish kind of an overview of it, maybe going through a book of the Bible in just a simple way. Fall kickoff time, January kickoff time, Christmas, Easter are usually at a very felt need or something that grabs attention. So Prepare Him Room is a series coming up. 5 Things That Will Kill Your Relationships. A series called Dumb Things Christians Say. That again will be a series that I know people like, what is that about? Like, what is that? Just grab attention. It grabs attention and brings them, and then you drive into the heart. So it's not fluff. Don't leave people with fluff. So there's a way to do both. Again, the word deep, I stinking hate that word. Because again, deep is not use big fancy terms. Deep is becoming more and more like Jesus. in ways that are sometimes painful. Forgiving someone who's wronged you, man, you lean into that, that's deep. My dad, I brought him on stage and interviewed him about his pain. So he's had horrible pain for 8 years. Most days doesn't leave. He has a bed in his living room. He can't sit. I haven't seen my dad sit in a chair for probably 8-9 years. I mean, it's just horrible. So to hear him talk about how to have joy and when you're not healed, when it hasn't gotten better, but it's only gotten worse. My dad is an electrician. It was seriously a Holy Spirit thing that he said yes. I've never seen something connect with people more. Just him getting up there and speaking from the heart. I mean, a felt need. Who in the room hasn't had a mom die of cancer? Who has experienced a miscarriage? Who blah, blah, blah. Whole room raises their hand. And so to hear someone like my dad just share from the heart, like just speaks to people, keeps me focused, Half Tuesday. So that's kind of the high level view of things. Do what works for you. There's another pastor in Sioux Falls. He's my closest pastor friend. He's a Wesleyan pastor. He fully has his message done 2 weeks in advance. So he's preaching a message that he finished 2 weeks ago. So one of the campus pastors said, hey, Adam, is that something you could maybe do or something? And I was like, oh my, that would be like a death sentence to me. I can't imagine. So I just said, I love that he can do that. That's really a unique gift. I can't do that. And Travis right away spoke up and he's like, he can't do that. And Travis has just the buy-in from everybody because he's not an executive anymore. He's a campus pastor, so he has the buy-in to say stuff like that. And he'd give a reason why too. He wouldn't just say you can't do that. He can't do that. He'd say no. Adam wears his heart on his sleeve, and so he's living this message all week long. So to try to get his passion on something else, he's like, it would just be weird. He's like, I don't even know how he would do that physically. And so just figuring out what works for you, because I love that Phil does that. But it's being okay with who you are. At the same time, don't use laziness or just who you are as a cop-out answer to ruin your team. Where it's like, we have no idea what she's going to preach on Sunday, because she lets us know Saturday afternoon. That's just being mean instead of being planned out. And I've needed people that have had to come alongside me. I would not be a year out with message series without Travis. So, any other questions on that?
To tie that, if you're looking to be even more planned, some people in the room, us type A's, Church of the Resurrection offers their sermon series matrix, and CCC with the big idea.
That's great.
Someone will always walk you through how to plan each week a year ahead.
It's great. I love that. Thank you for sharing that too. With preaching, I'm trying to listen from my own soul, so I really try to listen just for me. But I am studying those different people I listen to. A Christine Kane, I watch what she's doing to the room and how she delivers something. I'm like, why did that grab my heart? What did she do? And John Weiss, he gets up there, that guy, in seminary at Southland, my buddies and I were he has to have notes somewhere in the room. So one of the weeks we went up in the front row, and as he was preaching, I was looking back, trying to find the screens. I'm like, where's this guy cheating at? And he wasn't. It was all in here. And then I was like, I wanted to slash his tires just for fun. So he came and preached, and I told him that story, and he's like, I don't know what it is. He's like, I just have always had an easy memory, and I just have kind of this picture in my brain where I'm kind of walking people through, and I'm like, I have no pictures in my brain. And I'm like, I feel like if there's a few wires that are crossed or something up there. So we're just figuring out who you are, but also studying people. Again, like a Judah Smith, the thing that I love about him, he is preaching in LA and in Seattle, and he's preaching hard truth. So I'm like, how is he saying these things? And yet it's growing, and he uses humor and story better than anybody. I mean, he'll get you laughing to the point where you are crying, which I've always said laughter opens up the soul. And so then after he gets you to laugh, then he's like, now I'm going to just feed you Jesus. And so it's cool just to see different people. So And even people you disagree with, like, man, listen to them and learn from them. Figure out what's working, and so just it's kind of fun. And never not stop being a student, just of life, of people, of Jesus, of preaching, of whatever. I think there's fun in learning just different things and trying some different things out. Questions? Going all over the place here. Any questions on that? Do we switch to the next thing? Sure. Is that okay? So I thought, what I thought we could talk through is just outreach, and just how we've done that at different stages, if that's okay. And we've covered a little bit of this. I'm going to grab a seat. We've covered a little bit of this, but I just kind of want to share a few things. Again, we've covered some of this. I feel like at first, and you might be in this season now, it's kind of like the question of like an old church, how do I start doing stuff? At first, we were just scrappy. And this is a little bit of my MO, getting the hustle award is my strength. Relying on Jesus and never stop relying on Jesus. So you're not replacing Jesus, but you're like, man, I'm just gonna be scrappy. So everything from yard signs. I mean, early on we did yard signs. Hey, if you're a part of the church, would you mind throwing a yard sign out? Well, I can't get over there. I'll throw it up for you. I mean, figuring out a way to get yard signs out at intentional times. The day of our launch, I'm going to plead ignorance a little bit on this. I was 24 years old, okay? Throw some grace this way, would you? I didn't realize you just couldn't throw up yard signs wherever you wanted to. And so at midnight the day before our launch, I might have put yard signs over every square inch of Sioux Falls. So I literally, in the middle of a snowstorm, took my Chevy Cavalier and just like started putting yard signs out. It was funny, this lady from the city like 4 days later called and says, yeah, you can't do that. And I was like, really? And she's like, no, you cannot put them up on the interstates and every main road. I was like, I didn't know any better. I didn't. And so the funniest thing was she said, but if you want them back, there's a stack in the one corner behind our building. She gave me them all back. I was like, I love you, ma'am. So just yard signs, figuring out those things. Twitter. So not a single church in Sioux Falls had Twitter before Embrace. So it was just a tool that we got. Look for those opportunities. Like, what are those random opportunities? So Twitter now, most churches have it. If it's not reaching your people, don't have it. Like, figure out what works. Don't just do something because it's cute and trendy and hip. Do something that's effective. Baptisms. We still do this. Everybody getting baptized, encourage them, even if they got an infant being baptized, encourage them to create a Facebook event and invite everybody. Invite all their friends. Not as a church thing, it's them creating it. Hey, just baby Sarah is getting baptized. No, Sarah's not a name. Yannicka with a Z and a Y is getting baptized. So the names of the baptisms this week, I'm like, I can't pronounce any of their names. I have no idea who they are. So, but create a Facebook event. Something we've done for baptisms is, this has been a recent thing, and I feel like it's one of those like golden things we're doing. Before we do a baby baptism, and honestly, it was like in part of the service, and then you got them down and you try to do it as quick as you could, so it didn't whatever. Well, in our area of the country, baby baptisms are a huge deal. Most people coming from outside the church, the only two things they recognize is infant baptisms and communion. The rest of our service is totally foreign to them. They've never seen a worship leader in church. We've never seen that. Like, we see a priest, we see a pastor, very high church, you know? And so those two things connect with people. And so what we've done, so this last Sunday what we did was 45 minutes before the service, we took our multi-purpose room, decorated it all out fancy and beautiful, had cupcakes, had juice, fresh fruit, had a photo booth for the families to get a beautiful family picture on the baptism. We'll get that to you. We're going to print it off. Next Sunday you can pick it up, a reason for them to come back. So we did that. Best donuts in the area, really try to bake it up. Our kids person welcomes them. Hey, I just want to welcome you. My name's Chuck, and I'm the kids director here. And we just want to say that we love your kids. And we're so excited about our kids. And if you've never seen our kids ministry, even between now and the service, feel free just to walk around and check it out. Like, we're really proud of that, so go check that out. I come up, I just want to welcome you. Like, this is such an honor. I asked the first 3 questions, baptism questions, right then, so it's not in the service. And then we do the congregational response in the service. So they've had this warm, fuzzy moment. Oh, by the way, so they came forward, they do their questions on their way back to their tables with their grandparents and all this stuff in a nice room that just feels good. We got a gift bag for your kid as well. And there's a Bible in it from me with their name on the line. Like, just some cute, fun things in there too. And again, in our area of the country, infant baptism is salvation. So that is the legalism in South Dakota. There's no other legalism except get your kid baptized. That's the only legalism we have. And then don't party too hard where you can't get to church on Sundays. Like, that's like the only legalism we have. And so, so that infant baptism, you're having people, that is the unchurched. They're coming through just for that Sunday. What a chance to grab their hearts. So that message, man, it's always such a huge honor to preach then. So just looking for those little tiny things to connect with. Again, I talk message series is this: decide to become more vile to save souls. Like, just what is it that you've written off? And I don't know if I can say this because a DS has told you can't. Because a big giver has told you can't. Because whatever has told you can't. Don't be a punk about it, but if you feel like it will reach people for Jesus, I'm giving you permission, go do it. Because it's so important that you do. It's just so important. You got to make sure not to have the Jesus complex in this, but whenever I hear of someone taking their life or something, I never think, man, I wish someone could have reached them. Especially now that Embrace has grown to the size it is. All I can think is, I wish I could have reached him. Like, I wish someone from our church could have just like, hey, are you struggling? Hey, do you just need some help? One of our last funerals, we don't have many funerals, and when we do, they're horrible because everybody's so young. It was a young girl who her boyfriends told her, why don't you go blow your brains out? So she went to his driveway and she did. And that same day, and this is South Dakota, like, I'm talking nothing happens in South Dakota, okay? That same day, a guy jumped off an interstate bridge in front of a semi. And I'm like, if that's not a wake-up call of the church, I don't know what is. Like, people are shooting themselves in the head, and they're jumping in front of semis? That's crazy. And so, man, we get the greatest news that's ever been told. So that was kind of early on, that scrappiness. And I'm almost trying to get out of that mode for myself. I want our teams to be scrappy. I need to figure out how to lead and not be as scrappy anymore, but that's my default. Kind of in the middle phase was really just trying to figure out how to harness things. Man, I want to harness this. So a message series, how can I harness it to reach people? This event, how can I harness it? So 2 things that we harnessed early on was Buddy the Donkey is one. He's my go-to. So again, I'm a nerd, folks. This was Palm Sunday, like the week after Easter, probably 7 years ago. I got together with my Methodist colleagues, and before our time started, someone said, so what did you do with your donkey? And one's like, oh, we took it around the block with the kids behind it for Palm Sunday. Another person's like, what did you do with your donkey? We brought him in through the service really quick. Everybody's talking about their donkey. Again, I'm the biggest nerd ever. All I could think was, oh, why didn't tell me? Someone should have told me to get a donkey. like, that was my first thing. I was like, I don't feel like I celebrated Palm Sunday any day in my entire life because I've never had a donkey. So I'm sorry, Jesus. And so that was my first question. My second question, again, this is just that lever. How did someone like me, who would be drawn, if I saw that you had a donkey at your church, every nerd whistle in my head would have been like, honey, I'm skipping Palm Sunday and I'm going to First UMC. You know what I mean? How did I never hear about it? It just was like, you got a donkey? What kid wouldn't like to see a donkey? What parent wouldn't bring their kid to church to see a donkey? They must be heartless. And so the next year, I literally in that meeting sent a reminder to myself the month before Palm Sunday. all it said was, get a donkey. I was like, so the next year, literally it vibrates. I'm like, get a donkey. So I was like, so I need a donkey. So what we did, and Palm Sunday back in the day, used to always be our higher Sunday, because as an early church, a young church, Easter's small. So for established churches, Easter's king. As a new church, Easter's terrible. Everybody goes to the established church. Christ the Lord has risen today. I'm like, we don't even know how to sing that song at Embrace. So like, we just like, that's where we fall short. But I got this donkey. And so the day before, one of our campus pastors, who's borderline inappropriate in everything he does, goes out and shoots a video with the donkey. Hey guys, his name was Buddy, the donkey was, which made it even better. We got Buddy the donkey coming on Sunday, so if you want to get your picture taken, and I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, no more. But like, there's way too many jokes with a donkey. So, but like, hey, we take your picture taken, blah 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 blah, and so we had a wave. I mean, one of the greatest waves we've ever had, and we had a professional photographer there. Who's outgoing, important thing. If you just have a photographer who's not outgoing, it's not going to work. If you have a photographer who's not outgoing, get someone who is outgoing with them. Hey, you want to get your picture taken with Buddy? Oh yeah, with him, really? Oh yeah. We had a cute little setup with square bales behind it. I mean, the simplest, cheapest thing ever. They got their picture taken. Hey, we're gonna post it online right after the services. Make sure you go tag yourself. After the service, we had like 25,000 hits in a matter of like an hour or two. Everybody, and what that did, first off, a couple things. It showed all these people, their friends, the demographic of our church. It showed who came to our church. It also showed that we didn't take ourselves too seriously. There was one thing, this year, Brian's, our new guy, we had a sign last year that said, take a picture with Buddy, but stay classy. And a couple of the words were italicized. He's like, I don't know if we should do that. And they're like, it's too late. It's already been done. But so it kind of shows a little bit of the humor side too. And on that Sunday, I get up and I usually say something like, we got a donkey 365 days a year here at Embrace. And so, or something. I mean, it just shows your lightheartedness. And what better opportunity to show all of that than right before one of the biggest Sundays of the year, Easter.